What you're seeing right now is an invoice that was paid to me on March 13th, 2025, which is just a few days ago, for an AI automation system that took me roughly around 45 minutes to build. In this video, I'm going to go over exactly what this system did, and then tomorrow or in the next few days, I'm going to be releasing an entire full build tutorial of how to build this exact system that I'm talking to you guys about right now. My main goal in this video that you're watching is to make sure you can get your first AI automation client within the first 3 months. Everything I'm going to tell you guys are the exact steps that I use whenever I was starting, and if you can do these steps for yourself, you should be able to generate some very good results for yourself. The amount of money inside of this space right now is definitely life-changing if you apply yourself, and I wholeheartedly believe whether it's anybody inside of the industry or not, has or hasn't started, is able to get to a point where they're financially comfortable once they apply themselves. Now, what the system did was save around 2 to 3 hours a day for this company every single day. Essentially, they had several sales order documents that were very content rich and information rich, kind of like a tax form, but a little bit worse because this information was everywhere. They had what the items were, how many items, their part numbers, vendor IDs, salesperson contact information, shipping information, PO box information, you name it. What they did before the system was essentially have somebody open this PDF and then use their eyes to manually look for these little pieces of information that they were trying to collect, and then type those pieces of information inside of Google Sheets manually. And they had to do this field by field. As you can imagine, having to do this back and forth inside of a content-rich PDF was very time-consuming. So what we created was an AI automation that processes several PDFs in a row while having a trained AI system go through them and actually extract the specific pieces of information that they were looking for and then put it inside of that Google Sheet wherever they belong perfectly. So as you can imagine, now they can dump 4 to 5 different sheets and they would be done in half the time that it used to take them to do one. So let's talk about what I did to actually get in front of the person that bought it and how I was able to get in front of them and be confident without having to be a professional automation guru, because realistically, you really don't have to be one to sell and implement AI automations for people. You just have to know the ins and outs of one single system that you've watched long form videos about and really get started. Something that you would have built and refined yourself, just like some of the other videos that I'm uploading or any of the other YouTubers are uploading, that focuses on a specific system that solves a specific issue. So just to make things easier to cover, I split this up into 4 different parts that should cover pretty much everything that we need to talk about here. I've split this up into 4 different parts. The first one is going to be about technical ability and refinement. This is going to be your technical knowledge when it comes to actual building AI automations that you're trying to sell. The second one is going to be about finding your ideal customer. Who is your target for this system? Who would benefit the most? The third one is going to be about your offer, presentation, and pricing. Self-explanatory, but how do we want to position ourselves in front of this client? And the fourth one is going to be client outreach methods. This is going to be more about the best ways to actually reach that potential client. Where do you go and what do you do? Now let's talk about technical ability and refinement. Most people do confuse this with being already established as an AI automation expert, which, like I said earlier, is actually a misconception. If you guys notice, the last video that I released was an hour and a half technical build of a fairly powerful system for outreach that I built and sold. And there's hundreds of these that solve a lot of problems you can think of. So what you need to do is first reflect on your own experiences as a professional. For example, if I was a truck driver and I wanted to get into AI automation in my off time for trucking business, I would guess that being in the trucking business allows you to see the gaps and issues that really need to be fulfilled inside of trucking, where you can insert an AI automation to actually fill that gap. So this is crucial because identifying those pain points is part of why anybody would want anything to do with the system that you're going to be selling, is because these pain points are targeted and resolving them either saves time, money, manual labor, or all the above. So really reflect on your own knowledge and experience that you already have and use that as pretty much a launch pad to accelerate your learning. Now, if you don't have good professional knowledge just yet in any particular industry, or you're just not that experienced yet, maybe you're a little bit younger, Ask somebody around you. I guarantee you, you're gonna have at least one person you can talk to, whether it's a family member, a friend, a coworker, or literally a stranger. The beautiful thing about having free will is that you're able to get to choose where to apply it. And so if you apply a little bit of it and dedicate yourself to finding about a specific industry, you'd be surprised how much information you can pull from the internet along with other resources and people in your life. Now, after you have identified what this problem is that actually needs this attention, go out on a journey and search YouTube and the internet for people who've previously built an AI automation that would have potentially resolved that issue. And truth be told, there's probably not going to be a high chance that you're going to find a one-to-one match that you're thinking about. But I can almost guarantee you that you're going to find bits and pieces of systems that you're trying to build already exist in tutorials that somebody like me would have recorded, for example. So, quick example, if I wanted to build a system that monitors emails that come in, has an AI generate a response, and then actually send that response over to a person. But I couldn't find one specific video that covers all of this. I could find 3 videos, and the first one would be about a completely different build, but one component of that build goes over how to set up something like monitoring emails. Then I digest that and then go out to find a second video that could be covering something completely different, but a little part of it goes over setting up that AI response generation. And then I would do the exact same thing for that third part that I'm looking for. You get the idea. I really can't tell you guys how many times I have to do this whenever I'm building custom AI automations, because like the name suggests, they are custom. They have not been built before. So my job and your job as builders is to actually find those little pieces and put them together. Rely on people and AI communities like the one I run or any other school community that actually gets together and helps each other find those little bits and pieces. And there's almost always people in the industry that can point you to where you're supposed to look based on their experiences. This would save you a tremendous amount of time. So always leverage people who've walked this path before you whenever you're trying to really hone down your technical ability and refinement. By the way, shameless plug, if you're interested in joining my school community, it is completely free. This is where I post literally all of my resources, every single build for every AI automation that I'm going to be making a video about, and the ones that I've sold are going to be posted here inside of the classroom. So you guys can see these are the previous 3 videos, and then there's a file down here where you can download that JSON file. You can import it into your workflow automation and pretty much download my entire build that I actually spent hours building within literally a few minutes. It's also the easiest way to reach me. So with that being said, I will see you inside. Now here's where the refinement part really matters. Building a system once and just seeing it run from start to finish is cool, yes, but that's just step 1. The refinement part is actually where you separate yourself from the people who kind of know how it works versus the ones who really understand the system from the inside and out. And you don't get that kind of understanding from just watching a tutorial of somebody building it or just downloading that template and importing it. You have to build it, run it, break it, and fix it. Try triggering it in ways that the tutorial did not show you. Feed it the wrong input on purpose, see how it reacts. Change the AI prompt slightly and then see how that reacts. Try it in different flows and see how it works. That's when you start to see the real behavior of the system and not just the surface level stuff that you would see on YouTube. That's when you would essentially make it your own. You might discover that something inside of that tutorial doesn't work for your use case. Maybe the email parser that they used is not robust enough for your use case, or maybe the AI output needs an extra filter step before it goes to the user, or maybe there's just a better way to format it to make it look more professional for your use case. That's when you would step in and say, let me make this better. Now, another thing, whenever you refine these systems, you get way more confident when you talk about it. Whenever you are in front of this client, you can be in front of them and say, hey, if you ever get an invalid entry or somebody sends an empty form, you already accounted for that. Essentially, you would know the path it goes and nothing would fall through the cracks when it comes to actually how the system reacts. Those kind of details are what you need to know, and that's what makes them trust you to handle their business. I've had systems where I thought that I was done building it, and during testing, I found out that one small part wasn't doing what it was supposed to be doing, and that would lead me down a rabbit hole that led me to find a better way to build it as a whole. But I would have never found that improvement if I never spent time running that system over and over and actually pushing it until these little things break. That's the essence of refinement. It's the difference between a good build and a great one. And even if it's something like prompt tuning, this is where you're going to be refining how the AI communicates, what its system job is. You don't want it to be maybe sounding robotic. You want it to sound more real and human. That stuff makes a huge difference in design, specifically whenever you're delivering these that deal with personal customer relationships. This customization is very important. And like I said, keep note whenever you're doing all of this. It doesn't need to be fancy, but make sure you have a place where you're documenting your errors, your fixes, your upgrades. You're gonna thank yourself later whenever you're building these systems out, or whenever a client asks you, hey, whatever happens whenever this part doesn't trigger, you already know the answer because you would have wrote it down while you were troubleshooting. And so just remember, refinement is what gives you confidence, makes you sound very credible, and turns your system into something that actually performs well in the real world. It's literally the difference between showing up and hoping that it works versus showing up and actually knowing that it works, because you've stress tested it 10 different ways and seeing how it held up in those stress tests. So now let's assume you're technically ready. You need to understand what kinds of businesses does your system apply to. And the best way to do this that I personally found is putting yourself on the other side of the coin. What I mean by that is literally first think about what your system does and what it solves. Then imagine the worst case scenario that could exist where your system would be an absolute hero, like Superman, if it was implemented into that world. Once you've thought about that, now we're gonna take this imaginary worst case scenario in the real world and then try to match it as closely as possible to business impact with real businesses that will be struggling with those scenarios that you came up with. Let's just do a quick example for you. If I built a voice AI agent whose main functionality is answering inbound customer phone calls, collecting pieces of information from the caller, possibly qualifying them over the phone, and then booking an appointment onto our calendar based on what the caller's time and their suggestion. According to these four, the worst case scenario would be missing incoming phone calls, not getting their caller's customer information from that very first call, having to manually qualify them after calling them back, and then struggling to find open spots inside of your calendar while they're waiting on the phone. So at this point, I would literally ask myself, which business comes to mind whenever I think of these four pain points? And the business who would be hurting the most if all of those bad things were happening essentially would be real estate agencies. Because if you think about it, every single missed call is a missed potential contract and missed opportunity. They are very reliant on customer information for follow-ups and future sales, and qualifying somebody for a home is definitely a very annoying thing to have to manually do for each customer over the phone. And then their calendars are usually filled with open houses, bookings, and other inquiries from maybe months ago with customers that they would have to consistently follow up with, including any current and ongoing sales. So just like that, we found the ideal market for the system that we described earlier. Now, this doesn't mean that the system can't apply to other businesses like barbershops or any other inbound phone call taking businesses. It just means that the greatest business impact or pain points exist in this business that you identified. And that's where you have the most leverage, where it's going to be a little bit easier for you to get your foot in the door whenever you're selling your work. Now, after we identify the specific business type or market, we need to focus on how we want to present ourselves in front of somebody from that industry. If the person from that company was in front of you right now, what would be your elevator pitch? And if you don't know what an elevator pitch is, imagine yourself in an elevator with somebody and you want to let them know about what it is that you do. The idea is you want that person to clearly understand your value by the time this elevator gets to whatever floor it needs to be at, which basically reinforces the idea of having to be very precise and concise about the words that you're using in order to get your value across, to whoever you're talking to in a short amount of time. Basically, you need to think about how you want to get their attention in a short amount of time. I'm going to give you guys another golden nugget that I love to do a lot, and I personally found this Very, very helpful whenever I'm actually trying to put together how I want to present myself whenever I am speaking to somebody. And really what that consists of is getting in the mindset of being on that other side. I literally take my thinking, shift it from being the person who built the system, and then I imagine myself as somebody who needs the system. Then I ask myself questions. The first one usually goes like, what would somebody need to show me or say to me in order to get me really intrigued or hooked into listening to what they have to say? Whenever you phrase things that way and think of them from that other perspective, it becomes much clearer to think about things, and those initial first impressions become a little bit easier to understand. So if I'm on the other side, wherever I have a big issue with, hiring, for example, somebody came to me and said, I can show you how to hire somebody with 95% accuracy and be able to train them efficiently with our 3-week system. So that way by the 4th week, you're able to get a return on your investment. Obviously, this would be very, very huge for me as somebody who is struggling with hiring. And so from the perspective of the person selling it, you want to lead with what it is that you can do for them. You don't want to just say what your system does. Never do that. If your system does automated lead generation, I'm not going to go to them and say I have a system that does that. No, I'm going to tell them, hey, I can guarantee you this many leads booked into your calendar within X amount of time, just like how I did for X company, or you don't have to pay me. This sort of offer tends to be very, very good because the formatting of this offer is leading with what you can do and not with what you have. You always want to make sure you lead with what you can do, because this formatting as a result is very, very tangible. You want to sell the dream and not the product. If the product was a Lamborghini, you would want to sell them the lifestyle that looks like after they bought it. People coming up to you and taking pictures, potential networking opportunities with people, etc. Selling the dream is very, very important because people can easily imagine their life with this result, but they may not be able to imagine the value of this product. I can imagine myself being super fit and working out as a body image, but if you come to me and try and sell me the gym, it's a harder sell than trying to sell me a dream image of my dream body. Understand this concept and solidify it. So now that we talked about presentation, let's talk about offer and pricing. Remember, AI automations are value-based and not complexity-based. Just because you have a super long, complex workflow automation with 30,000 modules in it does not mean that it's worth more than one with 10. If the workflow automation has 10 modules and solves that pain point, then it's worth the same amount as the one with 30,000 modules. You are selling value. You're not selling complexity. So a good rule of thumb is measuring out how big of an impact this pain point is to the person you're talking to. Is it something they need, or is it something that they can get away with not having? Is it a critical thing in their operation, or is it just a fancy thing that's just a cherry on top of their business? Based on the value of the system, you're going to want to choose an hourly rate that you can determine for yourself. And I can tell you guys right now, most AI automation professionals are charging upwards between 80 an hour and higher. But whenever I started out, I was charging around 30 to 35. And that's because I did not care about making profits in the beginning. So in the beginning, you should only care about gaining those experiences and getting something under your belt whenever it comes to building this work, building a network full of relationships, having people be able to vouch for you. Those are your main priorities. Do not worry about making so much profit in the beginning. Worry about building your foundation, your work, your relations, and actually mastering those technical crafts of building these systems. One way to really gauge how much a system is worth is by going online to AI automation communities like the one that I run or any other one on School, and literally just asking the community, hey, I have a system that does X, Y, and Z. And how much would you guys charge for something like this? How do I think about charging for it? Essentially, what you would find is this is the same point that goes back to leveraging people's experiences. You're essentially using others who've built this system and their experiences and what they charge for their clients, and then you can use that for your own reference maybe knock it down a little bit and justify it by the fact that you don't have much experience yet and you're trying to really gain that experience. So let's say you completed those first 3 steps and now you're at a point where you are confident enough to actually start speaking to these people and reaching out. So there are 3 very effective ways of doing this in the beginning, and those are going to be online outreach, physically through attending events and business conferences, and then you have community-based social interactions. So online outreach means you're sending directed messages or emails to those people, that person, and then hoping that they open it up and be interested enough to actually respond and book an appointment to talk to you about your system. Physically is going to be about through events and conferences. This is going to be about finding where those business events and conferences are happening inside of your city, then making an appearance and making an effort to talk to those business owners in order to get a real sense of where those pain points are happening inside of their business. And then the third one, which is community-based social interactions. This is about finding online communities, whether they're Facebook groups, Discord, Slack communities, Reddit forums, searching online, literally any sort of community gathering where you can go in there and engage with the people in the community, talk to them as a whole, and be able to post. Now, I can already tell you guys from personal experience, I've done all 3 of these, and the ones that I found most beneficial for beginners are going to be in this order. The first one is going to be physical interactions with people at business conferences and events. This is actually how I was able to get my very first set of leads for the systems that I sold in the beginning. And this is also how I was able to gauge the interest for what I was selling at the time and what I was providing as a service. I literally went on Google and searched for business conferences and business events that were happening in my city and around the United States in general, and then I noted the dates for those and whenever they were happening. I registered for them, and then I sat down and created a game plan for what I actually want to get out of me going to that event. My first 3 main priorities were gauging the interest of the service that I was trying to offer, right? And then B is going to be finding out who those business owners are and what they're struggling with the most. C, talking face to face with people, getting their information, getting their LinkedIn, getting their phone number, whatever it may be, actually networking. Those were my top 3 priorities. And I can tell you guys right now, the very first set that I ended up selling came from executing on those 3. And it came from going to a specific business conference called Small Business Expo. This is a pretty big conference that happens around the United States where a huge amount of businesses and service providers, as well as people like me, go to showcase and talk with other business owners. Pretty much they talk to people about what's new in the market and what value they can bring to their business. This was huge. The first one for me happened in Chicago, and I actually drove 5.5 hours and booked a hotel there just to attend this event. After I came back from the event, I already had most of my burning questions answered, and the ones that I really had uncertainty about whenever I was trying to sell. And also I had gotten the experience of being able to talk to these business owners, get in front of them and be a little bit comfortable. And this is a double-edged sword that works in your favor both ways, because talking to those people is very different than reaching out to them online. They're going to see your face, they're going to remember your voice, and they're going to remember your personality. And if you come out as somebody who is intelligent and likable, and you can carry a conversation with somebody, then this lasts as a trustworthy impression in their minds, which makes it very, very much easier for you to open that door later on and then, talk about the services that you can offer them. Now, the second best way would be community-based social interactions. What I would do is go online and find as many Facebook groups that are centered around the business types that I'm trying to target. And there's usually many support groups for business owners everywhere online. Usually these people, they support each other and give each other lots of tips and ideas for improving their business. The goal for you is to join their group and then provide as much value as possible. Literally figure out what people are asking questions about, what are they struggling with, then make a post. Something like, I noticed people were struggling with X, and then maybe I created a system that solves this by doing X, Y, and Z. Give them those instructions, and then at the end of that message, let them know that this is something that you wanted to help them out with. Nothing in return. That way, a mental image gets put inside of their brains that automatically relates and associates you with value. And this is what's going to guarantee you later on down the line, people are going to be messaging you about things that you would build for them because you already portrayed yourself as a valuable person in their eyes without them having to give you anything for that information that you're providing. Kind of sort of like how I'm giving to you guys right now, and that's how I know it's working, because whenever you become a problem solver in the eyes of someone else, you're much more likely to be able to position yourself in a way that helps both them and yourself. Now, my least favorite method out of these is going to be direct outreach online, and this is going to be because, yes, we've all seen spam, and you guys know how that works. You know how spam goes. And to be honest, setting up a very effective cold outreach system is probably 100 times way more effective than the first two that I told you guys about. But in order for you to get to that point and set up an effective campaign, you're gonna need a lot of market knowledge, content and copywriting knowledge, technical knowledge, and automation knowledge. And so it's not really beginner friendly. It's an advanced system setup which does everything in an automated fashion. And you also run the risk of wasting your time and money for a very long time, learning the hard way by doing this waste. So as a beginner, I really don't suggest this method. As a beginner, I would only suggest this route if you have a mentor or somebody who has done it for you. Not really done it for you, but has done it before you, who can actually walk you through those bits and pieces that you would otherwise have to find out yourself about the hard way. And so literally, I would focus on attending those physical events and conferences, making an appearance, and then being confident whenever you're talking to those people, having a regular conversation, and then just genuinely trying to answer those burning questions that you have inside of your mind about what you're trying to sell. This is going to leave a lasting impression on you as a person. And then the second best way would be those community-based social interactions. For those communities, nobody wants to not work with somebody who they know and see as somebody who's valuable and can solve their issues. That's literally just not how this works. So become the person in their eyes who can solve that issue, and then you will actually become that person outside of their eyes that solves their issues. That's pretty much how that works. Now, assuming you went through those 4 stages, you should be at a point where you're technically, socially, and business-wise positioned in the best position as somebody who's a beginner trying to get into the space. And I would say the absolute most important thing out of all of this, for me personally, what I saw was making sure that you're honing down that refinement part whenever you're improving your technical ability. This is going to give you an immense confidence boost when you're at the stage where you're starting to talk to business owners, trying to sell the systems that you worked hard for. Also, always remember, as everything in life is, you probably will not see results in the beginning immediately. It really takes persistence, dedication, and discipline in order to get anything valuable in life. And this right here is no exception at all. If you're trying to achieve something out of the ordinary, you have to be able to do something out of the ordinary. And so with that being said, good luck to all of you guys. And if you have any questions for me, please click the link below to join my free school community. This is where I'm going to be giving you guys all those resources in order to get into AI automation. And so with that being said, I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.